In today's episode, Kanako asks, what are the best practices for conducting A/B tests on non-random situations? Well, the short answer is don't. An A/B test is a more properly named randomized control trial. You have a hypothesis, you have a control group of people who don't receive the test, you have a group of people who do receive the test, and then you have the measurement to see if there is a statistically significant difference between the control group and the test group. If you do things non-randomly when it comes to the selection of who is in each group, you are going to potentially blow up the test, create an outcome that is statistically not meaningful, or worse off, has some kind of bias. And so in order to test properly, you need to have that randomization to reduce the impact of those biases. So a real simple example, let's say you're running a test on your website and you want people to try out the new interface, right? So you say, hey, try out our new interface. At this point now, you're doing what's called self-selection, where people can opt to be in either the group that stays the same or the group that is different. Why would this be bad? Well, think about this. What is the behavioral change that makes somebody choose to be in a different group? Right? They may have a different personality type. They may have potentially a different a skew towards a gender, a skew towards an ethnicity, a skew towards a behavior. Maybe most smokers might choose that. Now, whether being a smoker or a non-smoker is relevant to your population may or may not be something you want to investigate, but just the fact that someone can opt into a test group automatically sorts those people by something other than randomization. And that group may behave differently than the group that's left behind, as opposed to a randomized group where everybody has the same chance of behaving in a similar situation, whether in the control group or the test group. So I can't really think of situations where you would want to have a non-random controlled trial. You can certainly do things like focus groups, maybe, to get qualitative information. But even there, you want to try and get a well-mixed sample of your target population rather than the 8 people that you know that to come talk about something, because, again, they may not be representative of the population as a whole. There are 4 ways that we see A/B tests, surveys, all sorts of things go kind of really off the rails. That self-selection is sure one of them. The randomizing of individuals in groups, as long as it's not done randomly, like say you're going to take everybody with a Gmail address. Well, that's not really a great way to assign people to a controlled trial, particularly if you're doing anything regarding email marketing, for example, because Gmail addresses may behave differently than Hotmail addresses or AOL addresses for those people who still have them. So you want to avoid doing group randomization of individuals. If you're testing the individual, randomize at the individual. Now, if you're testing a group, you can randomize at the group level, but then you should not be using individual level data. Third would be extrapolating a population to the whole population that's been selected. So this is one that we see a lot with email marketing and testing. People will send out email to a specific email list and get behavior, whether it's an A/B test running on site or whatever, and then extrapolate that behavior to the whole. You see this go wrong a lot with testing. A lot with surveys. You'll send out a survey to your email list, and then you will say, well, all marketers believe that A/B testing is overpriced. Well, no, only the people that you emailed believe that. And if your sample is not representative of all marketers, then your conclusion is invalid. There are a number of companies that have been doing this with surveys over the years. They email their database about their product or service or niche, and then say, marketers believe this. Well, no, only the people who are on your email list who have a self-selection bias. Right? Your email list has a self-selection bias. People do not opt into emails that of companies that they don't care about. So only the people who are on your list care enough about you to have given you their email, and they have a bias. Right? People who are in, for example, my Analytics for Marketers Slack group, which if you're interested in joining, go to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. People who join that Slack group, by default, have a bias towards being interested in analytics. If they did not care about analytics, they wouldn't join. So if I were to run a survey about analytics to an analytics group, I'm going to get very different results than if I ran the same survey to a random group of marketers. So that extrapolation is important. And the fourth one is insufficient sample sizes. Again, when it comes to A/B tests, if you run a test and you test 10 people and your website gets 1 million visitors a day, you've got a statistically invalid test. That so small of a sample cannot be used to extrapolate to the behavior as a whole, because there's too large of a chance that you've got people in there who don't behave like the rest of the population. So when you're running testing for A/B tests, you have to make sure that you have a large enough sample. Now, the good news is, for a lot of A/B testing software like Google Optimize, it decides when the sample is statistically significant. So you may want to run a test in a certain time frame. It won't let you. It will run the test until it has an answer of some kind or can't come to a valid conclusion. That one's not as much of a problem. But generally speaking, there are no best practices for non-random controlled trials, because they should not exist. So be clear about what your population is. Randomize it using true random selection, where you have a computer assign numbers randomly or assign groups randomly. That's how you avoid things like selection bias or confounding variables and stuff. Without that randomization, things just get messy, and you'll end up with bad data from which you will make bad decisions. So do it well. Do it with randomization. And if you struggle with that, there's plenty of software and tutorials on how to do the randomization, but make sure that you're doing it. You're not doing non-random controlled trials. Good question. Technically complicated question. So if the last few minutes were a lot of math words, it's okay. But just be aware of the idea that you always want to have a random sample. You don't want to have non-random samples. I can't really think in an A/B test of a situation where you would want something like that. If you have follow-up questions, please leave them in the comments box below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and the newsletter. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Want help solving your company's data, analytics, and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.